Okay, we're talking about is the national debt a problem or not, and I was talking about the fact that the national debt is over 100% now of GDP, and that was the chart I showed you earlier. You can see we got over 100%, here's 100% right there, and so back in the 2015-16, our national debt was hovering around 100%, a little over it, and now because of the crisis, it's now moving on to 140%. So second, you may hear that we're placing this burden on our children, grandchildren, and so forth. Not really. It'd actually be worse off if we if we passed a law that said the U.S. government cannot run a deficit and had to have always balanced budgets. That probably, or definitely, I would say, would hurt future generations more so. What we need to do for future generations is to give them a country, a planet that has good education, that has a good clean environment, that has renewable resources. If we can try to get our carbon emissions down as much as we can, that's better for future generations. So again, that would minimize the effects of climate change. So what we do today has a big impact on what happens to future generations. It's our responsibility to make sure we keep funding education, keep funding medical research, keep funding science, keep finding ways to make the country and the world a cleaner, better place to live in. And again, there's no day of reckoning for future generations to pay the debt off. And so their problem in the future will be our problem today is financing the debt. And really we should ask ourselves not whether deficits are bad or good, but where the money is being spent. It's really cost-benefit analysis. If the money is being better spent in, say, finding alternative sources of energy that would make the world a safer place for future generations, that's what we should be asking ourselves. Third, what about the interest payments? Yes, that does have an impact right now. Because economics, again, opportunity cost, if we spend $1 billion on interest, that's $1 billion that cannot be spent somewhere else. So the higher the national debt, the more interest we pay. That makes it more difficult to spend money on other areas such as defense, health, education, and so forth. So yes, that is a concern. And that I would say is probably the main cost of the national debt is the interest payments, taking money away from other areas that the government could spend money on. Another concern that has to be managed by the Federal Reserve in terms of how much debt they monetize. Can the debt be inflationary? And the answer is yes, if that debt gets monetized into more money. Right now, we have a central bank that's pretty independent from the federal government. The current President Trump is trying to dictate what the central bank can do, and that's quite dangerous. That has happened in other nations where they've ordered the central bank to print money to purchase government debt, monetize the debt, and that's where you get inflationary problems. Where inflation has occurred in a hyperinflation manner, which we covered in Chapter 7, where prices are rising daily, hourly. That destroys your currency, and what caused that was the central banks was pretty much taken over by the political system. Our country, the central bank still maintains its independency. President Trump has threatened to fire the board of the board of governors for the Federal Reserve. He has not done that yet. The question is whether he has the authority to do that or not. Hopefully he won't fire anyone for cause. He's not allowed to according to the law, but the law can be interpreted in many different ways by the Supreme Court. And you know about the Supreme Court. Trump looks like he's going to have 3 appointees to the court, and hopefully they have independent judgment. But again, who knows what can happen there. But it's critical for the Federal Reserve to remain independent from politics so we can avoid hyperinflation by the central bank monetizing too much debt. Future concerns for the national debt are two areas that are going to put a strain on the federal budget, and that is your Social Security and Medicare spending. Right now, they're about 33% of the federal budget. By 2030, if no changes are made, they'll be about 67% of the budget. And by 2074, if nothing happens, they will take about the entire budget. So that is not possible because that would be devastating. So something has to give. This is a problem we have to deal with. Social Security, I would say, is more workable than Medicare. Medicare is the biggest problem of the budget because that deals with healthcare costs, and they are increasing dramatically. And because of new procedures that are being implemented in our healthcare system, which is good, because now they can do more to extend life and cure disease, things like that, it does increase the cost of medical care. And so our healthcare cost is pretty much tied to the Medicare cost, and that is something that has to be dealt with somehow. And because the numbers say so. So we'll stop there, and then the next chapter will be chapter 10 on money, banking, and the Federal Reserve.